Today we'll talk about existence of orientation, a philosophy Aristotle, and it did have a huge impact of our civilization. It not only wants to describe things in a structure, but it also asks life to be an A structure. I'm Justinas Beinorius, ex-blogger, a developer, software developer. I will talk about general semantics today. On the first part, I will talk briefly on evaluation systems. I want to prove they exist. On the second part, general semantics history. On a third, formulations on general semantics. And finally, we'll construct one of Shipskey's devices. It's more a practical thing. We'll see how this engineer thought 100 years ago. What I have learned in 10 years of general semantics practice. General semantics says they go out of the way of Aristotelian way. They go beyond. We'll try to understand what it is, what it means. The conflict. The conflict that is happening in Aristotelian system is impossible to solve. Both sides say the thing are theirs and it's impossible to settle the agreement unless there is a possibility for asymmetry. Here's my idea of how to solve these problems. We should ask whether there exists something beyond the conflict. In Aristotelian system, we hear the saying, "The life is life," but we don't agree. Life is not life. Life at some point just disappears. Like in geometry, some surfaces, they become a line. Some 3D structures, when rotated, become a 2D surface. So the person who came into this world must move between points of observation or ask other person if what I see is true or not. What is normality? And the answer is, a rabbit is normal for the rabbit. A fox is not normal for the rabbit, because fox wants to eat the rabbit. And it's not normal for the rabbit to be eaten. There is also environmental normalities. Imagine we live by the ocean without any wave, and suddenly it starts to wave, and we ask why. If the ocean is in waves for a longer period, it becomes strange if it stops waving. In the last century, there were two psychologists, James Wilson and George Kelly. They formulated a criminological theory of broken windows. It says that the place in the city where we have a broken window is possibly the same place where the second window will be broken, because every second broken window increases the tolerance for broken windows. And a little bit earlier, Philip Zimbardo, in '69, made an experiment. He parked two cars in a similar condition without registration plates in Palo Alto, California, and New York, Bronx. In Bronx, the whole car was damaged in 24 hours. But Palo Alto was okay. Philip Zimbardo broke the glass with a hammer, and after this, the neighborhood decided that it's normal for them to damage the car further. 2008 and 2009, I was in Portugal, and it appears that you can walk with the shoes inside people's apartment. It was somewhat a semantic shock for me. But if we look a little closer, in Paris, Japanese people get a Paris syndrome. They have some expectations about how Paris is supposed to look for them, and they get this sickness. Headache and sickness results. You can check out Wikipedia to see it's true. But you don't have to leave country to feel the shock. Here is a woman in our local neighborhood who got shocked by the bus driver who didn't sell a ticket for a little girl who gave pennies for the bus driver. So she expresses her disappointment in the bus driver. So she was shocked. So she has some values. And the situation like the bus driver, the same woman meets another driver the same day, and it doesn't make a difference for her. And these situations are called outliers in statistics. Sometimes we are outliers, and we should ask whether we are outside or are they outside. A man bought a robot. Artificial intelligence. The robot makes coffee. The master wants to put the coffee beans inside, but the robot kicks in the leg. So there is a program that's working in the background, and the robot, it's normal for the robot to kick the man if the program says to do so. So the robot orients by program A, and it results in a kick in the leg. But maybe engineers can do something about it. Maybe plan for a software B which solves the problem. But artificial intelligence goes in circles by reprogramming itself. So there is no need for engineer. The programs observe other programs and results in harmony. My father grows animals, and I usually hear him saying that some of the animals try to kick him. So animals can choose about kicking. And sometimes we are kicked by someone and we can decide what to do. From one point of view, we should kick back, but from another point of view, we should not. So between we are kicked and we thought of our reply, we can decide whether this reply is okay. We can go to the higher order of abstraction to decide. Albert Ellis was one of the general semantics people. He has his own psychotherapy school. Ellis thinks most of the miseries happen because of how we formulate demands for life. We can think about reformulating some of the demands. I always have to be perfect. Other people always have to respect me. My environment has to be always perfect. There has to be no cold, no wet, etc. So because of these demands, the expectations fail to be fulfilled, and we happen to feel misery. Albert Ellis suggests replacing the demands with lighter versions, like I would like to be perfect. Other people, I would like other people to respect me. So it results in semantic relaxation. Let's talk hard topic, Aristotelian philosophy. It doesn't allow us asymmetries to exist. Last summer I was here in Kaunas and I was looking for apartment. I found one number online and they say they're looking for a girl, and I call them and I say maybe you changed your mind, and they say no. So they decide about choosing the girl or the boy to live in their apartment, and they have their own reasons. But one of the reasons could be that girls are better in some ways than boys. But in non-Aristotelian system, we have more freedom. Here we not only define what is A and what is B, but what does equality means for us. There is one mathematician who says that equality doesn't exist at all. Aristotelian system not only describes what life is, but suggests it couldn't be something else. So it's very static. Probably you have met this kind of philosophy, a language in institutions. They were very strict about how they treat you. So you are a little bit too late, a little bit too early, etc., etc. But in non-Aristotelian system, we have multivalid logic. It's not hot, it's not cold, it's some kind of degree, it's a spectrum. Leaving Aristotelian system looks like this. So in Aristotle's system, we have a chair, which is something to sit on. But in non-Aristotelian system, at first we'll agree, yes, the chair is something to sit on, but it's something else also. Like you can stand on it and it's some kind of extension. The thing that was in Aristotelian system, school bullying, yes? There are two persons in school bullying. The initiator and the person who is being treated unkindly. But look at this map, it's non-Aristotelian map. It has more than two persons. There are people in periphery who are also or may be important. So they are neutral people who support the bully, the guy who bullies, and people in periphery who support the person being bullied. We get some kind of thinking patterns from school, from university, from our grandparents. So we look at some situations in the same way all the time. And we must be brave about this. We must give them names and maybe at the end of the month evaluate each of the evaluation systems. So I see what's happened during the month, and one of the stupid ideas we can have in the head is like that two objects will drop at different times depending on how heavy they are, but it's not true, science says. So we step into general semantics territory, the place where evaluation of evaluation happens is the place where consciousness starts and where general semantics starts. Here's Alfred Shipskey. Shipskey, he was born in Poland. He was in World War I. He had an injury, but he was some kind of a lucky guy because there were a specialist team to go for USA. So he was happy about going to USA. His work was with guns, to ship the guns to the Eastern Front. But the war ended and he stayed in USA. Bruce Scottish biography says he loved science and his father was an engineer, and together they solved many problems. So the war was time without science, and he was eager to learn, to catch up with the latest science. So the time is great. The first airplanes. Shipskey asks why engineer builds a bridge and it doesn't collapse, and why social structures collapse. So why social structures break down? Why can't we find agreement, he asks. And one of the answers: we don't know how to use language properly. We left home without understanding ourselves. We don't know who we are. The closest thing that came to people, that we are animals. And Shipskey, while writing the first book, says that Aristotelian definition of human being a political animal is outdated. It allows people to be greedy, because we can always argue that it's a priority to be greedy in nature. And it was an argument for Aristotelian people. So Shipskey disagrees. He says people need a separate category to live in, without trying to translate their existence, to simplify their existence. Here, a person gets new treatment. He lives in time also, as well as in space. And he must evaluate his actions in the whole spectrum of other people's interests. So the first book, later he gets some critics, of course. The book is 264 pages. So 12 years. So in the 30s we have a crisis in America. Of course, he wanted to have more support, but so was thinking about how to, in a new definition, how to make a person healthy in this new definition, in his new environment. So he said, on one spectrum we have psychological disorders, and on the other we have mathematics. So he was juggling those two things to write Science and Sanity and to formulate his system, general semantics. So the cycle closes here. There's some kind of a theory, a point of view where you can always come back and think about yourself in a proper way. And these formulations are for the person to evaluate himself. Here, epistemology starts. So after the second book, the interest in general semantics grows. The teaching starts. Here is Shipskey class. It's a movie from 1948. At some point, general semantics becomes one of the most popular books among American intellectuals, and people are interested. At 38, the institute is created, and at 43 we have a journal, etc. This journal but Science and Sanity is no more a big thing. It's like 4% of what used to be. But the idea was good, to accept ourselves as we are. So it's the third part of our class. What's important for Shipskey, I'll try to make a point in these few slides. So language, he thinks, is an abstraction. Abstraction from what? What is abstraction? So in Lithuanian language dictionary we see that it's something taken from something else and it becomes an abstraction. Some features of something else becomes an abstraction. So in a way, a language is an abstraction from non-verbal levels. Here we have ocean water, so it's an abstraction. Abstraction from what? From something salty and something water. The ocean water is on the same level as other kinds of waters. So we can make abstraction from abstraction and have. So we have lake water, ocean water, and it's non-drinkable water. So non-drinkable water is even a higher abstraction. So when we hear a non-drinkable water, we should ask what kind of non-drinkable water. It's not important, but when politicians say they want to change some tax system, we should ask what kind of tax system they want to change. We should go down to reality, to lower levels of abstraction. One of Shipskey's students, Hayakawa, decided to separate from the school, and he left. He decided to make his own way, and he wrote a book, Language and Thought and Action, and one of the illustrations taken from the book shows a cow Bessie, how she becomes a wealth. So somebody has wealth, and we ask what parts make this wealth. Wealth is at the highest order of abstraction, so it's many parts. For some persons, it's new shoes. For a farmer, it's a cow who gives a birth. So we can go up or we can go down. But at the lowest order of abstraction, we have a cow Bessie. She's just Bessie. She's not cow, she's Bessie. And the owner loves her. But on the higher order of abstraction, we have just cow. We don't. So on the even higher order of abstraction, we have animals, and we have less and less of Bessie. Deletion happens. Elementalism. One of Shipskey's terms to define things to define our problem about splitting reality in fictitious entities. When I listen to new bloggers, I don't understand what they say. Not anymore. What is elementalism? I say what I say and I think it's true. But in China in 1958, they decided to remove all sparrows, and it was a huge strategy. They calculated that each sparrow eats 4.5 kilograms of food every year, and rats, they hate rats because they spread the sickness, and flies spread malaria. So sparrows, more sparrows, the more prize you get. So the whole country, the whole nation killed the sparrows. But there was a problem. Sparrows eat not only the food of the farmers, but also the grasshoppers. So the grasshoppers made so much damage that millions of people died. And Shipskey calls those things that artificial splits of sparrows and grasshoppers, and he suggests solving these splits in by putting a dash between the words, like link the words together, so we can trace back the causal relationship between them. So it's time and space, and sparrow and grasshopper, and also quotes. We hear about all kinds of social problems, and most of these should be placed in the quotes because they are so far away from the things they they represent, and somehow the quotes bring the facts in. The main point, the core of general semantics, is the map and territory relation, and also language and reality. So there are three things to say here. The map is not the territory, the map doesn't have all the territory, and the map can map itself. So the language is not the reality. It's not what it represents. The talking can't represent all the possible characteristics of the object level. So some objects have properties which are hard to describe, like small details of the pencil. Every understanding of the object becomes language, but every language becomes the better understanding of the object. So we differentiate. But we can also speak about speaking. Here is a map of Vilnius. You know this territory. There is a shopping center somewhere here, and in this place we have a store for maps. I never been there. But what's the idea? The map shows the map. So when we say that language is a map, we have these experts, people who know their field. And here's Linas Kojala, who knows his field. He understands the territory. So he's always on TV. He knows both the territory and the map. Maybe the territory less, but he well knows the map. He knows the political map. Here's my sister Ruta. She is part of Kurk Lietuvai, the organization, and she's in cybersecurity department now. So we laugh together that there are still people who happen to believe in money online. And some says it does happen. You get a letter linking to your bank account, and you see your bank, and it's okay. And the next day you see minus 500 euro in your bank account. So there are small details we miss, and they're important. The bank that looks like a bank is not the bank. So you should look at the address. There may be typos. Here we have 4 big cities: London, Paris, Moscow, and Tokyo. What's the idea? The map doesn't have all the territory. At some point, the map loses the dimension. The 3D world becomes a 2D map. But we can lose one more dimension. We have a line, and we have a sequence of cities. So it's a sequence, and it's information already. London, Paris, Moscow, Tokyo. This is a map for a person who goes from west to east. So we have Egypt, Portugal, Colombia, Myanmar, and Bangladesh. What is this? It's an answer to the question, what countries visited Pope Francis in 2017? So what we saw before was a map for a person going from west to east, and here is a map for a person who wants to understand how Pope travels. If we swap the Portugal and Egypt, we are lying, because the Egypt was visited first by the Pope. The structural differential. We'll construct it later, but it's a teaching device to show the students how to differentiate between levels of abstraction. In this case, the water of the ocean and non-drinkable water, the terms are on different orders of abstraction. This model has parabola on the top, the circles representing the closure, and label levels, which are unlimited, but limited for practical reasons here. So, and there are threads that some go to the other level and some not. And there's Ruta. She was a general semantics practitioner in 1990s, from 1996 to 2002, and I interviewed her in 2016, and she brought this structural differential flag. She was an active participant in general semantics earlier. So this parabola symbolizes events, something of subatomic levels. What science says, we have quantum theory, etc. The object level is the second one. His post house. It's something we can touch, we can smell. Some people say hundreds of kilometers away they can hear a Hiroshima bomb. This is how much we can have at this time. So to go to this level of abstraction, we usually use meditation to reach these levels. Then we have label levels. We have company names here. We name things here. We have football clubs. I'll read you last year's illustration for this label level. These are bizarre football team names. So let's continue. We have 20 more minutes here. So we see something. It's an abstraction from non-verbal realities. Then we go to definitions of things. We talk about wine history here. We define wine. So definitions, I think there are two types. By the way, I think it's a problem with the Lithuanian dictionary because we have so much cows in the dictionary. All the examples are with cows. What is this? Oh, you are confusing Lithuanian dictionary with current Lithuanian dictionaries. These are two different things. The Lithuanian dictionary has all the words, and current dictionary has only the words we use right now. So you confuse them too. What is car? A car is some kind of mechanical device. But these definitions are far, far away from reality. If the car happens to have an accident, there is nothing mechanical about the car anymore. But the lower order definitions give us definitions that happen spontaneously. The car itself creates a definition for herself. By being fast, she becomes a fast car. By being red, she becomes a red car, etc. And so this red car that we see in the street, she creates a definition for herself in some way. So then we have inference levels. So the boy comes to the room and says something to the mom and tells the story, and mom makes some inference. But every inference can have another inference and another one. So until we make a final inference, and the final inference is when we can say something else, but we consciously stop saying because it's unnecessary. So the final inference becomes a part of reality, and so we have a choice here. We can continue or step out. Sometimes we hear voices after crowdy meetings. It feels like they are in circle. Let's talk. Three kinds of definitions: overdefined, underdefined. So we have an area for flying cars. If any of the cars want to fly, to become part of this definition, they put the wings on and they start flying and they become part of this definition. So we can relax about our looks because we naturally happen to fall into some categories. And if categories work together with lower levels, they also change their form. What used to be marriage 20 years ago is a different thing from what marriage means to us now. There's also over definitions, like we take too much of the thing. Like all the cars are flying cars. None of the cars can escape the definition. But we also have extreme when we say none of the cars are flying cars. So none of the cars can enter the flying zone. None of the cars can enter the narrow definition. So it's some kind of absolutism. Here we go to dynamic definitions. It's somewhat a helicopter that flies by your head all the time. You grow potatoes and you always look after your potatoes and you evaluate how you feel about them, how they grow. But maybe someday you decide that you don't want to grow potatoes anymore. So it's always evaluation. So to avoid making our definitions of things too narrow or too wide, we use indexes. In Aristotelian system, our friend Tadas, who happens to be a liar, is a liar. And in general semantic system, we want to index people, and in that way we allow them to change. So Tadas 2012 is not Tadas 2007. The first thing is index of unique. So we differentiate between absolute similarities, and they become absolute differences. Because if we look closer, we see that one differs from another. Then we have date. We allow people to change in time. The apple doesn't differ much, yesterday's apple and today's apple, but if we talk about weeks, the difference is between eatable apple and non-eatable apple. There's also context, which if become part of a definition, the judgment about the things could be more sane. So when we use the indexes, they work together and they create more sanity. Charlie Chaplin said that life is a tragedy when you look from close up, and comedy if you look from far away. I used to make movies. I made a Kaunas airport movie, if you know. They made an airport and asked me to make a movie about it, and I said yes. We also made a few wedding movies here, but I don't do this anymore. This is a flower that is sensitive to touch. She closes whatever person touches her. It's called Mimosa pudica. And Monica Gagliano made this experiment. Scientific experiment, the device that drops the flower down, and when she drops down, she closes. And she noticed that the flower learns to ignore the drop, so she adapts. So a month later, she still remembers that a drop is not dangerous. And another experiment she made, she paired light, which is unconditional stimulus. She wants light, the flower wants light, and she paired this with wind, with a fan. So she turns on the light and the fan at the same time, and then she grows the flower in the dark room, and the plant grows toward the fan. There is no light. And this is the same what happened with Pavlov. He said the same thing about dogs. We can pair food with a bell and bell with the light. And when the dog sees the light, he wants food. But we can go one more step away, and the dog ignores the signal. The signal doesn't reach him. The signal is too weak, probably. But Shipskey arguments that the man has the potential for infinites of these signals. And it's not just food, it's emotions also. the smells, some of the smells are crazy. You can't possibly define them. Sometimes we know, but we're not sure. Some melodies maybe. And commercialisms use this a lot. So we have supermarkets that spread the smell of the bakeries and the music. They want the map to be the territory. So for the dog, the bell is the bone. For the dog, the light is the food. So in the same way, they try to trick us. A nice music equals a lot of money. But Shipskey didn't like that. Here we reach the time-binding level. Everything that happens is a result of our earlier abstractions, of how we are planning to reorganize our environment. I'm looking for example. Maybe we bought some new furniture in home, and this decision to buy something new and this placement gives us a new perspective, changes who we are in some way. But there are more important things like theories of how economy works, how the universe works. So these inferences of how the world works becomes the world. And by talking and talking, we go further and further away from reality. But when you have a lightning at night, and you hear it struck the tree by your home, and you go outside and you look at this tree, you're observing it in non-verbal levels. You want to understand how much damage the lightning made. So your thinking is secondary to what you are trying to understand. And sometimes we cut the onions and we cut the finger because we are thinking about something else. Shipskey says we live in object level and we should return to object level. What was negative, the forgetting, became a remembering, because now I have these threads that represent levels of something forgotten. I know I have forgotten something. I always forget things. Some details are always missing in abstraction. We can be sure about this. The forgetting becomes a normal thing, and it's consciousness of abstracting. And this is a person of general semantics. This is the device structural differential, and Shipskey suggested using our fingers to differentiate between non-verbal levels and label levels. Inference levels. We evaluate an evaluation system here, and it's on different level. So what we say comes back to parabola and becomes part of reality. But parabola is broken. If it was not broken, she would be in space. So for practical reasons, it's broken. The threads represent aspects. This is a lecture I gave in Kaunas, Kuzmickis library, on February 6.